Now that we've decided what your brand is, we're going to take this to a whole new level. And most people don't do this. So we're actually going to decide what your brand is not. And we're going to talk about who your brand villains are. So start to think of your brand like a character or like a person, whichever feels better to you. Every character, every good character lives inside of a story, and they are coming up against challenges and villains that they have to overcome. That's what makes a good story when we're thinking about like going to the movies, watching a TV show, and when you're building a brand, the same laws apply. So as you're telling this, the stories of what your brand is working towards, how you got started, all those different story prompts that are great for your explorer archetype that we'll talk about a bit later, you're going to need a villain. And these are villains that are common to your archetype because they're things that you are going to come across being who you are and having the habits that you do. So the idea of never leaving home or just being content and settling for what you have at home, whatever that means, whether that's literal home or never leaving your little zone of comfort with your job or your education. That's an idea enemy that you have as a brand. Also, the idea of not knowing yourself and not taking the time to get to know yourself is something that you fight against. People who don't value that, never trying new things, being stuck in a situation. So this can come through in actually your personal brand story. So how do you balance things like your family or commitments or things that you already promised people when your heart is tugging you to try something new or to change your situation or change your environment? Cynicism from people really gets you riled up because you have a sense of optimism and gumption and grit about going after what you want. So people who just complain are some of your brand villains. The idea of neediness or people who just aren't willing to take a risk or accept the challenge of discovering themselves is something that you fight up against. Also, on perhaps a more tangible level, rigid schedules or deadlines are a villain of yours. And I know a lot of your clients can rally up against you speaking down about rigid schedules or deadlines or any of these things, because these are the things that they're trying to shed when they're working with your brand. So if you show them ways that you're overcoming these concepts, either in your own life or in their life or on a more theoretical level, they'll rally with you because they want the same things. Now, pitfalls are something a little bit different. Pitfalls are things that you specifically, as the explorer, are especially vulnerable to. And as much as characters have challenges, we also expect characters to have flaws. So if you were perfect and didn't have any flaws whatsoever, you wouldn't be believable. That's just not how characters work. We're strong in some areas at the expense of others. So these pitfalls are your at the expense of others part. And so you don't have to completely get rid of these. It's not that you have to completely ignore or negate these pitfalls, but you do need to be aware of them so that they don't take over your business or do harm in too high of doses. So the negative consequences of taking risk can harm you, since you are willing to jump off the cliff into the water, get on that airplane to a place that you've never been. Sometimes you do run into trouble. Losing loved ones to your new lifestyle or your new choices can be a hard pill to swallow. Finding support, because as you're going through this journey on your own, people may not understand you. People may not support you because your exploration makes them uncomfortable. If you're always seeking something new and never settling down, I know that that's a villain of yours, but if you're always seeking something new and never finding happiness with where you're at, um, that can harm you and your brand. Being flighty or irresponsible, wandering instead of seeking. Some wandering is good for the joy of it, as long as you're not using it as escapism. Sometimes you have trouble making commitments, especially long commitments, and you can also be impulsive. So again, these are parts of the reasons why we love you, truly. Even as much as we love your strengths, we love that these are your weaknesses, but just be aware of them, because if any of them are showing up too strongly in your brand and in your personality, then you could be self-sabotaging your success. All right, now the what to avoid list, and you should have your own personal not to do list when it comes to your brand. You don't want to always be steering towards something. Sometimes it's way more effective to be avoiding something. It's human nature. We avoid pain as much as possible. So your what to avoid list are things that are so contradictory to what you stand for as an archetype and as a brand that they would do real harm to your business. People would almost be disgusted because they don't understand why you're acting this way. And these are different from any of the other archetypes. They're specific to you. So if you are encouraging people to settle, to choose security over discovery, or not to take action, it just won't make sense for your brand. People will probably just leave because it'll be confusing that you're not standing for one of your greatest beliefs. Getting too complacent yourself. So you have to keep living by example. So you can't go on one exploration, find one new idea, and ride that out for the rest of forever. It behooves your brand to keep finding new, to keep going down that journey of discovery. Promoting ideas that are too mainstream. So like the typical go to college, have 2 kids, and be happy with your white picket fence in the suburbs is kind of your archetype's nightmare. Like the idea of that is probably what you're escaping from. It's probably what you realized wasn't enough. It wasn't making you happy enough. So promoting whatever is super normal and expected goes against the ethos of your brand. Also, like putting too much stock in traditional certifications follows this same path. Obviously, education is good, especially self-education and education through travel and experiences. So you don't put as high of a stock on just book knowledge. You are much more of a street smart brand. Also, taking on too much responsibility and commitment, so you don't maintain your own freedom. So if you speak about freedom, but then you yourself are working 80 hours a week with no time for introspection or exploration, if you're sacrificing your health and your own well-being for the sake of success, this goes against what you stand for as a brand as well. So be careful about that. Keep that balance of space and freedom and helping other people do the same.